Hi, you're watching Talking Marijuana on the John Lovitz Comedy Network.
And here we are. Welcome, everybody, to Talking Marijuana, where we love everybody. We do. Talking Marijuana, we're your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer. I am the patient operator of California Patients Alliance, a GLACA-accredited dispensary here in the city of Los Angeles on Melrose. Come and see me if you're a patient.
I'm Yami Bolaños. I am the patient operator for Pure Life, now located in Hollywood behind Amoeba Records on DeLong Pre. I'm also the president and the founder of the Greater Los Angeles Collectors Alliance, and we've been happy to keep safe access alive in the city of Los Angeles since 2006. And with us in studio today...
Yes, for a rare visit to Los Angeles,
We love it.
I'm Don Duncan, the California Director of Americans for Safe Access.
It's so nice to have you here when you're here.
We love it.
Yeah,
town.
technically, I technically reside here, but it is a rare moment.
It's
that
a
I'm
rare
actually
moment
here.
that you're here for the taping. Usually you're Skyping these days. And our wonderful guest today, our favorite science guy, Michael Backus. You have a new book coming out. It is called Cannabis Pharmacy, and it's forwarded by Andrew Weil.
Dr. Andrew Weil, yeah, University of
that's
Arizona.
great.
Fantastic. So we'll read the foreword and kind of skim through what you write. Because
Yeah.
he's really, you are the science guy. Andrew might know some stuff about health and all of that, but you are the man that knows marijuana down to its molecular structures. And we are so happy to have you here because we have a lot of stuff to talk about this week, dealing with medical marijuana and the science of medical marijuana and the perception of the science of medical marijuana. We're going to talk about Arizona court ruling that extracts are legal, and we'll talk a little bit about extracts today. We're going to talk a little bit about the CBD only legislative bills that are kind of cropping up now in all of the, rather than legalize medical marijuana, we'll legalize just this tiny little thing. We're going to talk about that a little bit. The health benefits of medical marijuana. There's been some not clarification, but concise information about, more on a layperson's vocabulary, why we want this legalized medicinally in all the states, because it can really help people with a lot of problems out there. And we, of course, have our dope of the week. So we have lots to get to. Let's start with some medical issues. Let's start with these CBD-only bills that are cropping up. Georgia was en route, ready to legalize, ready to make this basically Charlotte's Web law. Where they were going to allow the CBD-only tinctures for children.
Sure, and for our viewers who are listeners who don't know what CBD is, CBD is the other big, exciting chemical in medical cannabis, in all cannabis.
Other than THC.
It has a lot of medicinal properties, anti-inflammatory properties, and pain-killing properties. It doesn't get you high. THC is the ingredient that produces the euphoria and the intoxication, but CBD is the other one, and lawmakers are feeling like this is more palatable or appropriate for children because, even though we'll give children painkillers and antidepressants and who knows what else, they don't want to give them THC.
And here's the problem. It's not studied on children. The thing is that
CBD
we know,
is not studied.
No, it's not studied. Now, we know it doesn't get you high, but we know it is a relatively strong medicine. I mean, it can stop seizures in children who have what are called intractable epilepsies that don't respond to other drugs. The big issue, and it's a huge issue, is the fact that in nature, the plant that we've used for 12,000 years is very balanced in its constituency. It has THC, in nature it has CBD, and it has a lot of other cannabinoids. If you push the plant towards pure THC to just get really high, or pure CBD just to increase the amount in the plant at the expense of THC content, you have a really kind of an imbalanced plant. And we don't know what that does. We know what it does with THC and Marinol.
We haven't evolved with those plants, right?
No. And so
There's a
the thing
synergy that goes on
and
with
we're
these.
testing it on children. Now, these are seriously ill children with desperate parents who are hoping to find something that will help their kids. And I understand that. But we need to study this stuff because we do not know what it does. All right?
Exactly.
We think it's safe, but they also notice that these doses in adult studies, that there's a thing called mental sedation that comes from CBD. You think a little more slowly, et cetera, et cetera. That's not really well defined. They don't really even know what it is. So
And people
caution.
say, well, CBD is not psychoactive. It is psychoactive. It's just active differently. Is that not the
Well,
case?
I mean, it's
It doesn't get you
it's
high.
active in your nervous system, all right, but it doesn't produce the same kind of effects associated with THC.
Sure.
All right, you know, there are like 80 cannabinoids out there.
Right.
Only THC is psychoactive. Okay. But these are all relatively powerful drugs, and what's cool is they're a very low toxicity, but they are deeply involved in your body's balancing act for memory, for appetite, for sleep, all of these different functions, how your intestines function. Basically, your built-in cannabinoid system runs that whole show. When you start taking single plant cannabinoids, you can throw off that balance, and we don't understand it very well. So we right now point our fingers at people who dab high THC extracts and say, whoa, watch out. Well, we should also be just as concerned about anybody who takes high doses of any cannabinoid without this
balance.
balancing
Balance.
effect.
Right, and that synergy is important. I know Dr. Marcoux has been doing research on the synergy between cannabinoids, and it may be, in fact, it's probably the case that these things are more effective working together.
It's called an entourage effect. And the entourage effect of not only cannabinoids, but the essential oils that are produced by the plant that go by the name terpenes, that are responsible for the aroma of cannabis, because cannabinoids have no smell. Those terpenes and all these different cannabinoids, they work in concert, kind of holistically, to produce effects. And those effects seem to be very, very well tolerated by people. They play well with our bodies. And it's really important that we don't upset that balance by pushing cannabis in one direction or another, that it's not found in nature. It's a synthetic approach to a natural product.
Right, and herbal medicines are different, right? We don't do herbal medicines like we do pharmaceuticals. You know, with pharmaceuticals, there's a way that works with research, with monitoring the outcomes and the efficacy. And herbal plants are different. They're subtle. They're
Right.
changeable.
So what it is you have in conventional kind of Western allopathic medicine, you have a single drug and a single target for that drug. When you're talking about herbal medicines, you're talking about multiple components, multiple ingredients, multiple drugs, and multiple targets. And it's a little more complex than our current system of studying medicine actually is capable.
And that's why we regulate herbal medicines differently in this country. We don't
Right.
regulate herbal medicines to the FDA because that's the square peg approach to the round hole, right? And so
Right. And what we try to figure out is whether or not they can be generally recognized as safe. That's the FDA classification. Generally,
Absolutely.
and the thing is that cannabis, when it's whole plant, and when it hasn't been skewed towards too much THC or too much CBG or too much CBD or too much anything, is generally recognized as safe. All right.
You know, where policy intersects this, of course, is now lawmakers are looking at CBD medicine as an escape valve at some level to say,
Absolutely.
oh, sure, we're going to take care of these kids with epilepsy because that's heartbreaking, and we're going to show how compassionate we are. We're not going to legalize medical cannabis in Georgia. We're just going to give you
Yeah.
this much, and that's a problem.
They could have
Yeah, it
some
is a
really,
big
really
problem.
bad news 20 years down the road when Johnny can't get into grad school.
Exactly.
And the thing is that again, these are seriously ill children that need emergency interventions, but we still have to be relatively careful about what we recommend for them.
Sure.
And what we legislate for them.
I believe, as a matter of personal opinion, that there is a place for drastic measures in drastic cases. In fact, medical cannabis has its origin in the HIV/AIDS movement in San Francisco, where AIDS patients could not get the pharmaceutical drugs they needed because of federal law, and so they just went out and started breaking the law and importing those drugs. And that same spirit of sort of rebellion led to medical marijuana, where patients said, no, we're using this and we're going to do it. So I would never say to a desperate parent, don't try this, but I think caution is warranted. And I
Well, it's
worry.
important that research be done because, like you say, you know, that's something that I say all the time. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen to these kids that are only taking CBD oils because there's no studies, right? They should go ahead and hurry up and start doing
And
research.
it's a short-term
especially
measure.
the yes.
Do it if you have to. But,
Ex-
and I would never blame these parents. But let's definitely look at this. And see.
Right, that the epilepsy trial that's going on with kids in New York and in San Francisco right now with a new medicine that came, it's a whole plant cannabis extract that came out of England from the folks at Usadabex.
GW,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's there, but it's not pure CBD. It's CBD and CBDV, another form. And what's really interesting about that is they're basically taking two opposites in the kind of cannabis chemistry world and putting them together to make the medicine for this epilepsy trial. That is not pure CBD oil. That is not Charlotte's Web. That is something that actually we really don't have much access to in the
Tell our
States yet.
listeners what Charlotte's Web is.
So Charlotte's Web is a variety of cannabis that the Stanley brothers, who are involved with a collective in California, in Colorado. Claim to have developed. And the reason I say claimed is that there's some question whether or not it originated in Colorado or Canada or California. We do know that the variety they're calling
Same thing with
Charlotte's
Kush,
Web,
right?
the things that they're calling the variety they're calling Charlotte's Web is identical to a variety that we call ACDC in California,
Right.
that is called Canatonic in Spain. And that has a really interesting Hebrew name in Israel. These are all basically 24 to 30 to 1 CBD to THC ratio
You
plants.
can't leave us hanging. What's the interesting name in Hebrew?
Avetical.
Avetical?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Being a Catholic,
So
I didn't have Hebrew
This is
classes.
a
kosher?
high proportion CBD to a low proportion THC. Still
Right.
keeps the THC in there. It's that
But
balance.
but what they're trying to do, and this was a fluke strain. The canatonic strain, the most common canatonic strain, is actually 1-to-1, half CBD, half THC. And guess what else has that proportion? Sativex.
Right.
And
right,
guess
which-
what else has that proportion? Anytime you grow cannabis as a field crop, over a couple generations, it will become a 50%
Really?
THC. That's the way it is in
Seeing
nature.
a lot of
should
our
have-
outdoor cannabis that we would
No,
get
I'm
at this
talking about
point.
if you go to Lebanon or Afghanistan where they have huge fields and they've had
Okay.
fields for hundreds of
The
years.
natural processes at work.
The
though, of-
natural
of breeding,
processes at work
yes.
make it a 50-50 plant.
Sativex, of course, is noteworthy because it's a pharmaceutical cannabis, but it's whole plant based.
Right.
Right,
They
right,
use
whole
a whole
plant.
plant to make Sativex.
Absolutely.
So it's not a pill.
CO2
like Marinol.
extract,
It's
right.
it's
Yeah.
a plant.
Yeah.
And so
it
they
has-
get that synergy with Sativex
And they have
that you wouldn't
terpenes.
get with Marinol.
They don't talk about which terpenes they have, but they have terpenes.
Well, it's a proprietary secret, right?
Proprietary that they're doing, yeah.
They didn't want to have to
GWs.
control for it with the FDA, so
Oh, interesting.
they just use it almost like a
Politics.
natural flavor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're having a little, to get back to policy on this, we're having a little backlash from advocates, medical marijuana advocates, who've been advocating for, 20 years now for their patients, but to be able to get legal marijuana, medical marijuana programs in their states, and now they're getting these very narrowly defined medical marijuana programs in their states being considered legislatively. Georgia, Tennessee, a lot of the southern states are
Well,
looking
Utah
to do this.
passed last week.
This,
There were a couple of them,
this very narrow Charlotte's Web, basically law, where it would allow for children, which is
We were saying how weird it is now that politicians seem to be lining up and racing to the finish line to get pot in the hands of kids. Finally.
yeah,
It's like,
it's really bizarre.
No,
We've
it's
got through the
one of
looking
those-
glass here.
I mean, what it is that we're always going to see that argument. What about the children? So it's what about the children? Either you're going to give them the CBD weed, and you're going to keep them away from the THC weed. The truth is that this underscores one thing: we use a lot of medicines with children successfully that help children stay healthy. But the one thing we have is we have an understanding of dose. And the one thing that's missing from this whole question, whether it's high CBD cannabis, high THC cannabis, oils, extracts, tinctures, whatever, is what's a proper dose? And we need to understand that. When we understand that, a lot of the concerns are going to disappear. And what about the children will become, we're doing the right thing for kids.
How do you feel
Good
about
question.
the Stanley brothers? In general, particular to me, I'm very grateful to them. I think they've done a great job in getting the education and the information out to people. But I feel that the responsible place for them to be right now is to say, this isn't only available from us, that it is available in California as this or in this and that, because they have whole families lifting up, we talked about this last week, lifting up their lives and moving to Colorado when they might not need to do that. There's this a little bit of hysteria over the Charlotte's Web, that's somehow the golden elixir. And my feeling is that elixir is available and can be produced in other regions. And the Stanley brothers should say that.
Right. Well, and also another thing too is that the rumor that's been going around for a while is that the Stanley Brothers, if you want to get access to Charlotte's Web, they charge quite a high price for the clone, but that's not confirmed at all. So that's kind of rumored at this point.
There's
But
all
what
sorts of nonsense.
I'm
like
sure
that
there's a lot of
circulates.
rumors, and I know those things. I'm looking at their real activity, and they
Right.
could
Exactly.
speak out right now and say something, and they haven't. And that's really the only gripe I have with them, because I do think that
think
they
they're
run
doing-
in a very
doing the
good
Lord's
way.
Well,
work,
just to
yeah.
be the devil's advocate, they don't know what's in California. They're not responsible for that.
yes,
So
they
they can only
do.
speak to what they grow. They can't.
But they can
but they
speak to
know
the fact that
that there's
this is
knowledge
not
in
something
California and other
that only
places.
exists in
They can't-
Colorado.
if I were a grower in California, I wouldn't be comfortable saying, "Oh yeah, here's what's going on in Colorado." 'cause I
Right,
don't know.
I know.
Here's one thing, though, that I think is important.
I'll tell you,
the
hold
group
that
I-
thought.
Oh, go ahead.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a slight little break here, and we'll come back and we'll find
Great.
out this one important thing.
Cool.
And then go on to 12 other important things. Okay.
Let's talk dabbing.
Great. We'll talk dabbing later. Talking marijuana. Be right back.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network. But come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
Okay. Hey, we are back talking marijuana. We were left hanging with a very important point from Michael. And we were talking about the Stanley Brothers and high CBD strains.
Yeah, I think the answer to this is that some of the client dispensaries that I consult to, what we've decided to do is we're going to open source these high CBD genetics.
great.
And so what we're going to do is basically just make, clones of them available for free for people who want to cultivate them.
Sure.
We think right now there's an incredible shortage in Colorado, in California, and everywhere for high CBD
Oh,
oil.
absolutely.
Yes.
And the thing is that the only way to fix that is for this coming outdoor cultivation system to get it out there into people's hands so that they can grow some. I mean, the thing's a huge yielder. It's a big plant. It grows very happily outdoors. Doesn't require pesticides.
Right.
Doesn't require fungicides. It's really hardy plant.
Wow,
And
that's
so
great.
might as well get it out there and get it in the hands of
At its
people
base,
for free.
it's a
And
weed.
that's the most
And weeds grow
compassionate
good.
thing,
If you have a
yes.
strong weed,
Yeah.
it can take over your whole.
When this thing is out there, though, and people are going to cultivate it, they're going to improve it, they're going to nurture it, and that's, as strains move out and become more broadly cultivated, they typically get better.
And that what will happen is that people will cross them with high THC cannabis cultivars
Right.
and actually start to restore the plant to its natural balance.
And for
which is
decades,
great.
that's how this has worked. Like
Yeah, because-
growers have released plants out, and other people pick it up and crossbreed it, and
And prohibition has ensured one thing, that THC became the important thing for a long
absolutely.
time.
Because
and
it got you high.
And we need to restore
We're
the
out of
balance. When
balance.
we do, a lot of the adverse effects that people complain about will go away.
And what are the adverse effects? that
Well, I
people
mean, when
get?
you take a high THC med, like when you take a dab the first time, often you get rapid heart rate, you can sweat, you can get paranoid, you can really have some negative reactions.
I don't use cannabis anymore, but when I did, I often had less desirable side effects from cannabis, and especially really potent cannabis, uneasiness, paranoia, just general restlessness. And I'm sure a lot of that had to do with some
yeah.
the most potent stuff that Northern California had to offer, right?
And so what happens is that people who have had, and many people have put aside cannabis because of adverse effects, when people try these more balanced varieties, they go, oh, that's what I used to like.
Yeah.
That's why I
Exactly.
started doing it.
Well, we have
And I
many
think that's coming
patients,
back.
that come to us now because of all the education that's been out there, because of all the legislation that's been out there. We have a lot of patients that are coming to us that did smoke back in the 60s, and they're 60 years old and more now, and they're like, I'm not sure, is this the same thing I smoked? And yet they will, if they get the right combination for them, the right hybrid, let's say, for them, they're feeling really good and not so nervous about the drug anymore as they used to be, because now we talk about it as a medicine. It's accepted.
And
Pretty.
people need that language to.
Yeah, they
And
need
I
to feel
think
it.
too
It takes
that-
away. Part of
Exactly.
paranoia is psychological.
Exactly.
And if you're feeling when you're going to start smoking that you're going to go
Exactly.
nuts,
And a
you're gonna-
lot of patients I find too, the older patients that come in, they say, oh, this is different pot than I used to smoke in college. The college pot was not as strong as this. So they're already paranoid about
Right.
But
medicating.
they're
because-
actually, but it's true.
It's
Yes.
true.
And the thing is that the stuff that Bob Dylan and the Beatles smoked was 2 to 4% THC, but still had a lot of terpenes in it and these other things. And it was a very, very different plant than what we had today. What we're complaining about is moonshine.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, and so when you're faced with moonshine, it's whether it's good moonshine or bad moonshine, but it's still
moonshine.
moonshine.
Yeah.
And I think what we do is we restore, what the 60s were fueled on, and we'll find that it actually can be a little bit better integrated in society. It's a lot more motivating drug at low doses. And so the thing is
Yes.
that a lot of these workplace concerns. And what's wild is you saw the study this week, of course, about driving and cannabis. Did you hear about
I
this?
haven't seen it. What's the?
Fatalities.
Oh
Okay?
yes, I did see that.
So
yeah.
fatalities were lower in people who had higher amounts of THC than lower amounts of THC. Unlike alcohol, what seems to happen is when people use cannabis, they tend not to drive. And so what
Or
it-
just slow down a little, right?
Well,
I
let's,
mean, so
let's
you
be
drive more
careful,
cautiously.
which is not to say that it's okay to drive stoned.
No,
That's
not
not
at
what
all.
the study
Not at
says.
all.
And
Not at
our
all.
community sometimes misrepresents these
Exactly.
things. It's not that it's okay to drive stoned. It's just that it's perhaps not as bad as driving
it's
alcohol.
not okay to drive on the influence of anything.
Anything, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, really, it may not be good to drive on the influence of McDonald's. I mean,
Probably not.
Science will
That'll
probably
kill you.
uncover it. Yeah.
That'll kill you
Sooner or
quick.
later.
Not in an accident, it'll kill you eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
A heart attack might happen while you're
behind the
driving.
wheel.
Oh my goodness.
So this issue of where science and this collision of science and politics is big right now because this issue is maturing and coming of age in the media.
And it's one of the issues that advocates are looking at, and in the same sense that we feel that the voice of advocates sometimes lowers about medical marijuana, and you wind up with what happened in Washington.
Yeah.
We need to keep advocates vocal about these things if they're
smart.
and smart,
Right, we don't
and
want
absolutely smart.
vocal advocates
Get
saying stupid
behind
things
the
isn't a great
science.
idea.
Well-informed advocates, yeah.
And again, we don't have the science because it's a Schedule I
Because
drug,
of
and we're not
prohibition.
allowed to do a lot of this research. Although a lot of research goes on.
An insane amount of research.
Insane amount of research, but it's
2,000
not-
papers last year.
But our government won't accept that research because it's
And
not.
it doesn't get media
Well,
coverage.
they're ignoring
It doesn't
but
get
they're-
media.
and now they're starting to back off. What's really wild is that we're starting to see the cracks in the facade at NIDA.
Oh,
So
yeah.
National Institutes of Drug Abuse is kind of backing off a lot of their positions.
Well, let's talk about that one case that's come up now in Arizona, which it was NIDA, right, that allowed this research to go forward for PTSD.
Speaking of collisions, right?
Speaking of collisions of policy and medicine, for sure. So NIDA has said, you know what, we really need to know about how this is going to affect our returning soldiers if we're going to prescribe this for PTSD. So we need to do research. So let's go ahead and do research.
And what's cool about it is Sue Sisley, who's the doctor who's running
gonna
the
do the
program,
research. In
her
Arizona.
protocol, which she developed with MAPS, is really, really a nice protocol. So it has a low THC, it has no THC cannabis, like nothing, no CBD, no
Right.
nothing in it. It has 2%, 6%, and 12%, and then a 6% CBD and a 6% THC combination. And my guess is that balanced cannabis
Is the one that's
could be
gonna-
the winner.
Could be.
And they're looking for the science for the dosage, which is what you're saying
So-
we don't know at this point. That's part of what this research was for.
And the policy effect of this, of course, is that think of how legitimate medical cannabis feels to the broader community if it's being used to treat our sick soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
And you say, well, how do you say no to that? Well, a senator can, right?
We had a senator in Arizona. We'll get to
Yeah,
her
we'll
a little
get to
later.
that at the
She's,
end, yeah.
she's going to top it off.
Okay,
She
okay.
is our dope of the week. We'll
Oh,
let that out of the
really
bag.
know.
But it's ridiculous, when you bury your head in the sand when facts are emerging and science is emerging, and you just say no, no, no because oh my God, the children. You're not really doing your job, and she's not really doing her,
Well, we'll
her,
talk
her
about
job
her
on that.
later.
I'm spilling the beans. So.
That's all good. No, we're excited about what we have to talk about for sure. That's always
You
the
know,
case.
This perception of the media and science and policy. We saw that this week in California. There was a hubbub about hash oils, about butane hash oils and so
Yes.
forth. All of that business is playing out in the same way as the high CBD with children. We're having that same sort of weird policy, media,
yeah.
science
Absolutely.
thing with that as well. So it's a funny interplay that we live in, this sort of weird border region.
I'm trying to think of the one you're talking about.
SB 1262.
There's a bill in California
Yeah,
that brought this issue to the forefront. But you know what happened recently is that in response to this legislative issue in California, a spokesperson from my organization, American Safe Access, was quoted somewhere in one of the trade-oriented magazines saying, "We want patients to have access to these concentrates, but they have to be safe." Mm-hmm. Now, I can't imagine a better quote than that. That seems like perfectly crafted soundbite. But it was touched a nerve in the community of people saying, oh, no, they're against concentrates. And the reason people are feeling touchy about this is because there's a bill in the California legislature right now that would, in fact, disallow a certain kind of concentrate,
Right.
butane honey oil. It's a
Right.
kind of butane extract of cannabis. It's very potent. And definitely something that there's a lot of ambivalence in our community about, something I'm definitely very ambivalent about. And this is another example of where science and perception and policy all are sort of colliding at a three-way intersection.
Right.
and it's a huge issue because
Well, we were talking earlier about, before the show started, about the butane extracts and your sort of conversion. You started out being very much against them, and now you have a different view toward
so
them.
the science changed my mind. Okay, so here's what's up. Everybody's always pointed at CO2, carbon dioxide extraction, as being the gold standard.
Non-solvent, they say.
Yeah, but the thing is that carbon dioxide as a liquid at pressure is a solvent, and that's why they're using it. But it's not that good a solvent, and one of the issues with it is it doesn't pull off the whole chemistry of the plant. Butane, which boils at freezing temperatures, so you can purge it off once you've extracted with it. It's very non-toxic, and the thing about it is that I think that the issue becomes safe professional extraction.
Exactly.
Right.
That is then, those extracts have to be tested and be proven to be solvent-free, and that's science. It's sober, and it provides worker safety. And
We have
customer
a mutual friend of ours who blew himself up twice.
Yeah.
Making butane hash oil.
That's great. And the truth is, if somebody's going to make bombs in their garage, they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that nobody should be allowed to make butane concentrates in their apartment. That,
Of course not.
Backyard.
Right. When people make extractions with solvents professionally, they have what's called a sniffer around that can detect potentially dangerous levels of gas before they blow up, and actually shuts down the system. This is how industry does it. That's how we need to do it. This needs to be regulated
Right.
with normal federal worker safety guidelines to make sure people don't get hurt. And I'd
And they're
actually
doing it
ask
right.
for even a higher level, because we know that occasionally industry can get around worker safety
Of
guidelines.
course,
As
No,
coal
we
miners.
need to know these products are safe when they roll off the shelf.
Exactly.
The products that are
That's
out there right now.
regulation. It's not banning.
Exactly. And regulation is good. It's good for the consumer. That's why we have regulation.
Yeah.
There was a day in this country where people routinely died from spoiled meat
Yeah.
and took medicine and they had no idea what was in it, and we have regulation now that
That
protects
helps
people.
that.
there
I
was-
have a medicinal question about the butane and CO2. I recently heard, and for me, this information is very confusing. I am really a layperson on science. It's not my subject, and so I read a lot, but I hear many different theories posited. And one that I heard recently was that butane and CO2 as solvents for marijuana, when they're used, change the molecular structure of the marijuana that you're then going to take in, whereas some solvent like alcohol would not. It just takes the medicine out and is, and then again, I'm saying that from a lay point.
It's a really good question. I think what we're referring to basically is that solvent chemistry and any plant extract is complex. And so what happens is at various pressures or temperatures or with different kinds of solvents, yes, you can change the chemistry of what you're extracting. But those problems are solved all the time. I mean, the bottom line is there's a whole world of natural fragrances and flavorings that are extracted from natural products. It's called, there's a whole range of it. It's called natural products chemistry. And it's really, really well understood. And so from a scientific perspective, you don't want certain things changed. And there are advantages to ethanol, alcohol extraction, and there are advantages to butane extraction, and there are advantages to CO2 extractions, and there are advantages to every kind, and disadvantages. And the thing is that in a regulated environment where you have responsible oversight, what you're going to get is you're going to get the knowledge base to make the right choices, to make the best products. And then the marketplace is going to decide. And, I don't want to sound too much, like that, but but at the same time, I think that with good oversight and good regulation, we're gonna actually enter kind of a golden age for cannabis extraction.
And this is good for patients, and that's what people have to remember,
Great
that
for
this is
patients.
good for patients. They need to walk into a collective, cooperative,
Right.
or a legal marijuana store in states where that's legal,
Yeah.
and just have the same assumption of product safety that they have in any other retail store.
They need to know where something was made. They need to know how it was made, and they need to know what's in
Well,
it, and
but
that's
the
it.
truth is that when I walk into a drugstore, if I want to buy Tums off the shelf, I have a natural assumption that somebody checked that out, and it's cool, and it was made in a sanitary place and all of
Right.
that. I don't read the label. I just buy the Tums because I assume it's safe. Patients need that same certainty, and they're not getting it right now.
No.
Eventually, initially, in the cannabis community, people will read the label, and the reason is they don't trust the product always yet, but they will.
Yeah,
they will.
sure.
I mean,
But
right now
people-
they want to sniff the jar. They
Yeah,
wanna,
but even sniffing the jar. This last weekend we had a situation, right? I mean,
Let's take a little break. It's a good point before you get into the story. But when we get back, we'll talk about the situation with your patient and go on to some other of the items that we had on our list here. Maybe we'll get to that dope of the week story.
Well, I'd be willing
So
to,
let's take
so
a little
why
break
bother?
and we'll come right back.
Okay.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network, but come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
And we are back with Talking Marijuana. Your hosts, Barry, Yami, and Don, and our wonderful guest, Michael Backus, the science guy.
Didn't he
Do you
write a
like
book
it
or
when I say
something?
that?
Yeah, I think he wrote a book.
And I think it's coming out. It's called Cannabis Pharmacy. We're going to talk about that for a little bit, too. But first, let's finish your story.
Yeah,
You were talking about a patient that came
Well,
in.
no, that this weekend in Los Angeles, there's what they called the Secret Cup.
Ah.
And that was all concentrate, right? Shatter, blah, blah, blah.
Shatter, wax,
all
butane,
the
oils.
butane-based medicine. And there was a little bit of a controversy. And so why don't you tell us about it and tell
Well,
the
so
people.
look, there's going to always be a lot of controversy when you have basically a moonshine contest. Okay, so you have a moonshine contest, and then a real science lab shows up and tests your moonshine, and surprise, surprise, oh my gosh, it's moonshine. There are impurities in it. All right, and that's exactly what happens. That often you'll see high levels of unpurged gases or solvent residues in these products. You'll have, there's a story from a major national marijuana organization convention last year where the chairman
DC?
of the
National Major Marijuana
Convention went to the hospital because he never had a dab before.
Oh, no.
Okay, and the truth is that at this conference, apparently around 20 times the number of normal emergency room visits happen because people aren't dosing this stuff. They're
Wow.
they're going, oh wow, is that? I've never
Really,
tried
they're
that."
like, is this enough? Do you
Yeah,
like a bigger
exactly,
one?
yeah,
you want a
yeah.
smaller
Wanna bring
one?
your dad- Do you want to choke?
Yeah, and the reason they call it a dab bomb. So when you have a competition for dabbing, you're going to have unregulated extracts in competition. Okay, so it's a moonshine contest.
Well, we talked about policy and science and public opinion, but there's also a sociological aspect that comes into
Yes.
effect here. And I'm speaking sort of here as a layman, as an observer. I've dabbed a few times in my life. It was very potent. I coughed a lot. But when I watch people dabbing, I'm seeing a different sociological event than when I see people pass a joint. And so that's part of my ambivalence about what I'm seeing with this, is that this might be good medicine. I'm not saying this is not good medicine for some people. What I'm saying is that it's not the same as smoking a joint with your friends. This is not the same thing.
A friend of mine used to work at Cape Kennedy. And what they would do is they would go up on the side of the rocket 300 feet above the ground, and they would drink the pure ethanol that they were using as rocket fuel. There was a reason they call it rocket fuel. and they would just get crushed and often have to be helped down.
No doubt.
Well, the thing about it is the reason that these extracts exist, actually, is to infuse other products at a
of
reasonable
course.
dose.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay? But you don't necessarily want to do the pure thing. Okay?
People are getting really, really impaired on this stuff.
Well, anecdotally, like what you've been saying about the people getting too dosed on that. There's a friend of mine annually has his birthday party. And at his birthday party, for the past 3 years, there's one guy that always comes, sits on a couch, and dabs people for the birthday. It's recreational. It's definitely a whole other milieu of what's going on. But every single year, there's one person that turns white as a ghost, sweats, vomits, passes out, whatever it is, and has to leave. And that's been super consistent. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Next year, replace it with shots of 151, and I guarantee you'll have the same
thing.
Effect,
Right.
yeah.
I remember that from high school, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that when people are sitting around sipping Everclear, you're going to have somebody who has a really not so good.
I'm sure. It's a good analogy because if people want to do shots of Everclear or Mad Dog 2020 or whatever, so be it. But that's not the same as sipping a fine wine.
No, and it
it's
is
not the
more
same phenomenon.
regulated. That those liquor products are more regulated than regular liquor products.
I would say to folks who
Because
are
they're more
very into
dangerous.
dabbing to be objective about this.
Yeah,
and to,
but on both
to
sides.
take a step back and look at this and see. I don't support banning dabs. I don't support putting people in jail
Absolutely
and
not.
making them trouble. But I think you should be objective about what's happening in the big picture with your substance
Right.
use, whether it's medicine or not medicine. You need to be objective about it.
And also, the
I'm
creeping
worried about what I'm
tolerance
seeing
gets
with
crazy.
this. Exactly.
Yeah, no, and I think that the example of this last weekend is good. I really do, because it's like you say, it was moonshine contest. So there's a lot of people out there making these concentrates and claiming that they're good and that they're strong and that they're pure. But absolutely, that's not true if the results came back the way they did this weekend. That so many of it, had
Right.
residue in it or whatever it was. That,
Now, a friend of mine who runs a very, very good lab in Los Angeles says that there is a very small subset of these extract manufacturers, these underground extract manufacturers, who are making insanely clean products.
Sure.
Okay, so it's
But
so
how
you
do you
can't
know?
bring you can't
Yeah,
you
how
can't
do you
know.
know?
I mean, you can know if you go to your dispensary and say, "You test this stuff." Who tests it? Okay, and like, can I see the
Who
results?
tested is important
Yeah.
because not
Yeah,
every
who
testing
tests
lab
it,
is
yeah.
one of the projects we're working on at Americans for Safe Access is a certification program that covers cultivation, processing, distribution, and testing, because the standards for this industry are just evolving. And
Yeah, there are
it's-
no standards
It's
for this
crucial that
industry.
when we come up with these standards and enforce them and embrace them, that they be based on science and be outside of our industry. The fox can't be seen as guarding the hen house here.
Right,
And that's why
right.
we're talking to the American Herbal Products Association, which is the leading organization, so the voice of the herbal industry in the United States, and embracing the standards they've developed for these things, because
And
we
I
need to
sit-
bring that
I sit
in.
on that committee.
Right, you helped write that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And,
So I sit on that committee, and the truth is that the herbal products industry, I mean, they've been down this road. They've been dealing with the FDA for years.
and
We
keeping it
haven't-
off.
Yeah,
They've been
and
keeping
we
it off.
haven't we haven't dealt with
AHPA
it. Yeah.
has kept the FDA off of herbal medicine for 20 years.
Right.
And
But-
the FDA's tried to squash it.
Right,
But,
but has also enforced safety guidelines.
Exactly, and that's how they
And-
did it, is by
yeah.
setting their own standards. And they're policing it as an industry, which means the government can get off. And our people should listen to that. They should pay attention to that, because we have people in our movement, our industry, who know safety and know products and know science, and we can do this.
Yeah.
It was
if we
amazing.
will.
And there
who
has
showed
to
up
be-
that meeting.
Yeah.
It was amazing. No, really, like the people who were in that room. David Bronner from Dr. Bronner's Soaps, Lyle Craker from University of Massachusetts Amherst, who's been taking on the DEA to break the monopoly on cannabis
right.
cultivation for research. All these heavy hitters show up at this meeting, and it's like, wow, this is really pretty pretty
It's
powerful.
and you know that program's taking off. We're getting on an average one application a week nationwide
great.
for
That's great.
collectives and cooperatives that want to be certified. Cultivation's coming online. Testing will probably be last. It's very technical, as you know. It's not the easiest thing to
It
certify.
seems
in
to
the
be
world.
very technical, but also very, again, no standards
So
for
let me put a
testing.
plug out
at
for
the
patients who
moment.
want to know what this is. PatientFocusedCertification.org. PatientFocused
And it's really great too.
Certification.org.
One of the first dispensaries to get to actually go through the certification process, the president is the mayor of Sebastopol.
Exactly.
Robert
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Jacobs.
Spark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Spark.
we had
And-
him
Spark
on,
was the
a
first
couple
one,
of
yeah.
weeks ago
Yeah,
to
Spark,
talk about
and then
that.
also here in California, Berkeley Patients Group, which is an organization I helped establish years ago, and then we just brought. The name is slipping my mind, but Patient Focused Certification. You can find it all there. .org. So yeah, crazy stuff with the dabbing,
But
the
it's so
CBDs.
controversial. There's so many people, you know, on social media, and they're just like fighting each other, and it's like, you know, it's logical that if you're gonna, you know, consume a product, and it has something in it that, you know, like should be tested, that it should be tested, you know, and
Absolutely.
it should be clean. That's just logical. I don't
We
understand
wouldn't
why
argue
people-
against that with soda
No.
or corn chips or anything else. We would-
Exactly.
Or
We were-
tomato.
Or tomatoes. Yeah, you know,
tomatoes,
your
yeah.
tomatoes are tested for safety when you buy them at the farmer's market. There's a field test process to
And that's something that's
Yeah.
really important that needs to be
And
established. if
I'll
it's gonna
say this
stay.
too, since I'm already out on a limb saying controversial stuff in the community. We have to be really aware of economic interest standing in the way of regulations. Industry may dig in their heels at some point and say, or sub-industry,
Right.
pre-industry may dig in their heels and say, no more expense on this. And FUI, if it's about patient safety, then
It has
to
we need
continue
to,
to
yeah, then
move
that's
on.
a
Have to
justifiable
continue to
cost.
move
Because
on
what
from that.
you know, medicating with the medicine that's causing other problems, what the hell? You
Well,
know, you
that's
want to
what
do
we're doing
that.
with
You're
most
sick
of
like
the
I'm
world.
sick,
Yeah.
that I have all kinds of problems, and if I smoke something that, you know, is going to cause me more problems, then that's not
There was
medicine.
a scientist at this meeting who said you got to be really careful with extractions because historically in the herbal products industry, when you start to make highly concentrated extractions, the FDA starts to pay very, very
Exactly.
close
Mhm.
attention because you start to get towards a drug, a pure
right.
drug. And that's what the FDA, that's what they do. And so what you're doing is you're basically sharpening their teeth for them when you
Exactly.
start. And so we
Giving
have to
them an
be
excuse,
very
yeah.
careful about you know saying, oh, these concentrates are so. We're primarily looking at them for infusion to
Into-
provide non-smoked alternatives, not to set somebody up with a blowtorch and a
And
dab
piece
rig.
yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly.
And that's really important. If we keep our eye on the ball, which is we really need these for people who can't smoke or vaporize cannabis as a medicine, we'll stay on the right track.
And it's been an amazing medicine. I wanted to give just a minute in this show to talk about because I also it was splattered all over the internet this past week. A short little article about 10 surprising health benefits of medical marijuana. And although many of us know that, you're tuning in, you have some clue, or you wouldn't have even been at
We're
this
not
podcast.
sure both of our listeners know all 10. So.
But yeah, the two of you that are out there, I'm going to just go through this little list, and it is amazing what this plant is helping people with. We have, of course, don't have it on here.
People like you when you have very high quality medical
yes.
marijuana. So there's that.
There's always
That's
that.
the whole friend indeed phenomena, right?
Yeah, people like you.
People like you
here we
when
go.
you're liked, you're healthier. Yeah.
You're a much friendlier person.
Uh-huh. We're tap dancing here, Barry.
I know, we're tapping in here. So, it can stop number one. It can stop HIV from spreading throughout the body. Now, this was news that came up last month. THC, an active ingredient in cannabis, is effective in stopping the spread of HIV in monkeys. A lot of this is, of course, in the research stage. It's not proven science yet, but when we have a multitude of these research projects, let's say, that are bringing in similar results, then we
And we
need
don't advocate giving dabs to your monkey.
No, not to your monkey, not to your
what a
dog.
waste.
And again, this is not about dabbing. This is more about the medical benefits of the actual medicine. Slows the progression of Alzheimer's, one of the worst
that's great.
diseases that we have. And I'm going to work on my own clinical trial of that.
Yes, me too.
Because
The more
What were
we
we-
smoke, the
what were
less
we-
Alzheimer's we'll have, baby.
What are we talking
Who are
about?
you? It slows the spread of cancer cells.
Yes.
We got a yes. It is an active pain reliever, and I'd say that's one of the first medical.
At the right dose, now because there's a sweet spot. So sweet spot for pain relief, and if the truth is, if you exceed it, you can end up in more pain. So you got to
That's
really watch
true.
your dose when you use it for pain.
And always, when you're dosing with marijuana, less to
can
start
always
with.
take
You
more.
can always
Always
add
take
on
more.
more, right?
Never take less.
It can prevent or help with opiate addiction, and we know that this has
Yes,
been
exit
done for a
drug
long time as an
therapy.
exit drug.
And actually, it actually helps with the amount of opioids required to relieve pain. So what it's synergistic with the opioids, and what it does is it lowers your dose of the opioids, which is kind of great.
Yeah, so you don't have to use
It combats depression, anxiety, and ADHD, and this is also very well known anachronistically through our.
And I'll hold up my little dose sign again. A lot of these effects show up at relatively low
Small
doses,
doses.
so use small doses.
When you're using medicinal herb, you're not trying to get high anyway. So you really should be using it in a small dose to one of the
People
great
miss their
things
windows,
about
right? They do
Yeah.
too much. And they get outside the
thing
You
that's
can
really
titrate
fascinating
yourself.
For ADD, the dose is super low,
Yeah.
and it gets you hyper focused. And the thing is that you can tell when you're taking too much for ADD because you'll start to drift. Okay.
It can help with other neurological damage, such as concussion and strokes. This is what's going on in the NFL right now, and the discussion there. Should it be used for football players, other
And that's where
sports?
CBD is crucial.
Crucial.
CBD is so I view CBD as a neuroprotective vitamin. Effectively, small dose of CBD can protect you for up to 7 weeks.
Wow.
Wow.
That's it can prevent blindness from glaucoma. Or again, one
In
of
some
the
cases.
in some cases.
And I'll give a word of caution for people with glaucoma because it's something that we've dealt with a lot in my family, and that I even deal with it to some degree. That marijuana does not cure glaucoma. So if you have glaucoma or you're pre-glaucomic, you need pharmaceutical treatment. There's wonderful treatments in the world, but it will help treat the symptoms.
Yes.
I feel like I tell my patients often that marijuana is not a curative medicine; it's a quality of life medicine.
Most medicine is palliative. I mean, that's what most
Right.
medicine does.
Yeah.
But it's especially important with glaucoma because I know people who have stopped taking their pharmaceuticals to
And you
smoke
don't wanna
cannabis
stop.
they're getting symptomatic relief, so they think they're treating their glaucoma, but they're not. Their condition's deteriorating.
And then the last medical use is it's connected to lower insulin levels in
Oh, that's
diabetics.
absolutely true.
Yeah, insulin resistance.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I my insulin, I don't use as much insulin as I used to. I mean, I'm supposed to use a certain amount, and I test myself every day. And if I consume a lot of cannabis, like if I have like a lemonade that's, like infused, or if I eat an edible, I always test lower the next day. It's absolutely the truth. It keeps your insulin levels down.
We're going to take a quick break
Go
to
ahead.
test ourselves, and then we'll be back and we'll talk a little bit more about this.
See you on the other side. Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network. But come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
Time flies.
And interesting.
Hey, we are back with Talking Marijuana and our guest Michael Backus. What's the organization that you're working with? Los Angeles.
I'm working with Los Angeles Patients and Caregivers Group on Santa Monica Boulevard.
fine
A
Organization.
fine organization.
That's
the
Very
one I helped
LAPCG.
establish.
healthy.
LAPCG.
And the first one I ever joined as a
Oh,
patient.
excellent. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
good.
Back in the day, and the thing is that I wouldn't have written a book about medical marijuana or anything without LAPCG.
It is at this point the oldest continuously operating medical cannabis facility in Los Angeles
That's
County.
awesome.
Yeah,
And,
pretty cool.
Which is kind of sad because some of the others got shut down, which is really
Well, it is sad.
There's a gray lining to that silver cloud.
where were we going to take this? Oh, okay. So we listed 10 medical benefits. And of those 10, I would say that 3 to 5 of them are definite for sures, and some of the others we're still looking into. How does our government continue to say that we have no medicinal value to this drug? That argument seems to be breaking down.
And here we
It's
come
a
and crash
terrible
that
argument.
intersection again.
And
Yeah.
policy
Politics,
and medicine,
science,
yes.
public relations.
But the thing about it is that they have a tendency to understate its value. We have a tendency to overstate its value. So let's meet in the middle and
middle.
regulate it.
Exactly.
Okay, because then,
yes.
and that's the problem is that advocates have a tendency to overstate the benefits,
It's a
and
silver bullet for everything.
and then the other side, the policymakers look at it and go, what about the kids? What about the
And advocates make a strategic mistake in this because they're so enthusiastic about cannabis, and great, I'm glad they are. They're so enthusiastic that they promise the moon. It cures everything, it treats everything, it's completely harmless, it has no side effects. And what happens is you don't come off as credible.
Right.
And so the real message that you need to communicate to people who are ambivalent or don't believe us, you lose because you went too far. It's just like having the right dose of cannabis. There's a right dose of advocacy too, where you can see the point and say, you know what, maybe this isn't for some people. It doesn't necessarily treat everything, but we still have to move down this path and make this a real medicine.
And there's
in our
a simple
country.
answer for it. If you have an evidence-based medicinal approach and an evidence-based policy approach, that's the middle ground.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a hard place to be. But
Well, it's hard to get policy at this point on board with science.
It
Even
sure
though
is.
this
Because
administration
science-
has said that's where they want it to go, they've really avoided it in this issue. Avoided it completely.
and on the policy issues on states across the country and at the federal level, we're at an obstacle, a hurdle in the road because there's a disconnect between where the people are at on this and where their elected officials are. And our elected officials in the combative, adversarial world of American politics right now, both at the state and the federal level, people are afraid to go out on a limb for anything that could be seen as controversial or could open them up to an attack in an election campaign.
Right.
But if you look at history, if you looked a year before Prohibition fell in the United States, when they polled politicians, none of the politicians saw the end of Prohibition coming, and it is coming.
The people
And it-
always are ahead on this, always. Yeah.
And so the thing is that we need to stay on them because their eyes are going to open.
Oh, yeah.
That
And
is a
the
key.
more-
And
yeah.
I keep saying this in every episode: is that you have to talk to your lawmakers.
Oh, you sure
Very
do.
often, we go into offices in Washington D.C. and say, "Have you been hearing from your constituency about the XYZ amendment?" And they said, "Nope,
No.
never." Now, they may get a couple of calls a year, but on the environment, gun control, reproductive rights,
They're
marriage
getting
equality,
hundreds,
they're getting
thousands.
deluged with phone calls and emails and faxes and visits to our office. We have to be that. And in order to be that, we have to build our coalition and get bigger and bigger and bigger. It can't just be the small number of cannabis people who are really dedicated to this issue.
I feel like
We
it's
need
building. Do you
it
feel
is.
a
It's
positive
We've got the unions coming on
movement
board,
toward that?
labor's coming on board. We've got the herbal products
CNN.
people,
CNN,
media,
media, we've
we're
got
building
law
that base,
enforcement through
and that
LEAP.
is also why we have to be credible. Because when you go out to the herbal products community, if you go out with a bunch of crazy hocus pocus cannabis nonsense,
You're in
they're
trouble.
not going to line up behind you.
No.
If you go out with science and rational policy, then they're like, this makes sense.
And Bill O'Reilly's new show on Fox, Speaking Marijuana.
Speaking marijuana, nice.
really? Now talking marijuana, speaking marijuana.
Do we have a lawyer?
Yeah, he kind of still.
I really want to go after Bill
Well,
O'Reilly.
yeah, no kidding. We have a bill here in California, though, that everybody can participate with.
Absolutely. Let me mention two bills really quickly.
Okay.
There's
Yeah, let's
several.
do it. Let's
I'll
go
just
on
give you
to-
two. AB 2500 is another is one of these unscientific bills. It basically makes it a crime to drive with any detectable quantity of THC in your system.
Ignorant Bill.
We all are
At
never
its
going to
po-
drive
Regardless
again.
of impairment, any THC in your blood, you're considered DUI. That's not science. It's not fair because obviously you're going to test positive for THC in a blood test for days after your last use. So
Maybe a month.
no,
Maybe
no,
up
no.
to-
That's in your blood, not a month.
Okay.
But days. For
Okay.
sure. Based on, there's differing interpretations of this, but we're talking about a blood test, and it's not fair. Yami always tests positive for THC. You too.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I
I,
mean,
definitely.
I'll
do.
never be able to drive in California. That's
So
okay with me.
We advocate for an approach that you test impairment and see if somebody's impaired, whether they're too sleepy, too high on marijuana, or too drunk. Let's find out, so we can have a safe roads. But don't just criminalize a whole class of society.
And we
It's
have no
field sobriety
test yet.
tests that are
Field
really-
sobriety test.
We have no
Which, by the
field
way, is the only
sobriety
thing that ever
test.
stands up anyway. That's like
Exactly. When
yeah.
they have a film of you weaving all over the road with a Cheech and Chong cassette in your hand.
Yes. First
Looking
of
for
all,
a place to play it.
why would
My-
you have a cassette? What's
But
it
we
do?
don't
My
have
auntie-
a
So
no one
standards for a
AB 25.
sobriety
No, we
test
don't.
yet, and California is trying one out, Los Angeles specifically.
Well,
with,
no, but that's a chemical sobriety test. There's still a field sobriety test where you see, like the police
Like
officer,
walk this line
based
or
on his or
just
her
basic
professional
stuff.
judgment and experience, determines whether or not you're capable of driving that vehicle. That's good enough. I'll say this: don't smoke and drive. It's not worth
No.
it. Just
You
put it in
shouldn't
the
drink and
trunk.
drive either.
Put it in the trunk and smoke it when you get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So AB 2500, no on AB 2500. If you go to our website, americansforsafeaccess.org or safeaccessnow.org, you can actually call and email.
This is how easy it
legislators
is
right now.
to advocate through Americans for Safe Access and many other organizations that are out there. You go to their webpage, you look at an
Super easy
issue
now.
that you're interested in, and you want to talk to your legislator about, and maybe you're scared to make the phone call or you don't like to have to write down the letter. The letter is there online.
We're
and
really
you can,
encouraging people to make that phone call now. We're giving
Absolutely.
phone scripts.
Yeah.
So you
And
don't
you
know what to
can-
say, read my script.
Absolutely. So the solutions to that at these organizations, and especially at ASA, they do it really well. They already have a script there for you. If you want to make the phone call, you can stick to that, or you can add whatever you want. You can improvise a little bit. Or they also have letters there that all you need to do is fill in your information and make a click and it goes
send.
off. And all of those things are so important to do. So just a little bit of time.
A little effort on your part makes a huge difference. Congressional staff members report that personal contact from constituents is 6 times more effective than the communication from a paid lobbyist. 6 times more effective.
So if you don't care about making a phone call, make that phone call and be nice,
You-
be
take
professional.
2 minutes on the phone.
Yeah,
Hello,
it's-
my name is so and so. I live in your district.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a medical cannabis patient. And I want you to vote no on AB 2500.
And that's
Click.
literally
That's
it.
And it used to be that you were kind of the outsider when you advocated on this issue, and now you're the cool person.
Yeah.
And so the thing is,
They
is
wanna
that
hear
it's
from you.
become very, very cool to be a cannabis advocate in this country. Get cool.
It's
Get
very
cool.
get cool, exactly. And by
That's
the way,
awesome.
it's very rare for a constituent to contact their lawmaker and be mistreated or abused in
No,
any way.
they're nice
It almost
to you.
never happens because they want your vote.
Absolutely. They
So
are
even if
good.
they
They're
don't
very
like your
nice.
position, they want your vote.
And it really matters. It's where our democracy counts. You're able to do these things.
And
they
we're the
have to take
majority now.
them. We're the
We're
majority.
the
We're the
majority.
majority,
We're not
so
we're not the
all the-
struggling
We have real
minority.
power if everyone were to get
Speak
together
up.
and go forward.
If
yeah.
we took a week in California, any other state, or in Congress, and everybody who cared about this issue made a phone call, it would be headline news all across
And
the
it would change
nation.
policy.
It would be that would be a game
And,
changer.
and when what we're in the minority in our political power right now, but we're numerically the majority, and it's time to use our bully position. Okay.
And
If we
what
can just
you're
all get on the
doing,
same
Push back
page.
hard.
what
yeah.
you're doing by sending that email or making that important phone call, what you're doing is adding to this to the movement. It is not a silent. I did this and it doesn't really matter. It matters. These
It does,
these legislative offices. What it does when you call, it gives their legislator the cover they need
Right, so
to be
they
able
know.
to move forward with legislation. When they don't hear from you, they have no cover and they will not vote. On
Right, they
these.
need to know their district. Remember, all of our lawmakers are elected to represent a district,
District.
and all they need to know voters in that district
Want
are okay
this.
with it, and they actually don't care what the majority of the country thinks, so long as their district's on board. That's why we have these like radical, crazy Tea Party weirdos in
Absolutely.
Congress, because they come from tiny rural districts that are hopelessly conservative,
Right.
and they don't care that their opinions are 200 years out of date. It doesn't matter.
Right, the
because
300,000
district
people
is
in their
cool.
district love them
Exactly.
and are as wacky as they
Well,
are.
we can do
That's
that
like
too.
Senator
We can do
Yee
that.
in Arizona.
Senator
she doesn't
Yee in
care
Arizona,
about
our
what
dope of
her
the-
constituents
our dope of the
think,
week. Well,
'cause
let's-
they've been calling her and trying to talk to her, and she's not answering phone calls, and she's
What's
to
up
do
with
what
that?
she wants.
Who's got her cell phone number?
So I think she's our dope of the week.
Yeah.
And what's her name?
Senator Lee, I don't know what her last
Senator
name is.
Lee. I have that here. Yeah, so in Arizona, it was an interesting kind of a week in Arizona because there was a court that ruled that extracts are legal in a very narrow ruling that allowed for children to get the extracts that they.
I mean, it's one of these things where the court came out today and recognized the existence of oxygen.
Yeah.
Wow, well, thank you for that.
Thanks.
So glad you let us know about that. Yeah.
So that was going on in Arizona. Maricopa County Superior Court judge ruled that a 5-year-old Mesa boy with debilitating seizures can be treated with marijuana extract, effectively reinterpreting the Arizona medical marijuana law. And we'll see how that moves forward, because obviously it'll go
There'll be
to
an
higher
appeal,
courts
right,
and
right.
appeals in this. But along with that, in Arizona, we had our freaking dope of the week, who was
Dope.
Senator. I want to get her name right. Her
Yee
name
or
is
Lee? I can't-
Yee, Kimberly Yee.
Okay.
The much talked about proposed federally approved study about using marijuana to treat military veterans who have post-traumatic stress disorder made headlines when it got a green light from the FDA and the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, it still has to go to the DEA, who have not approved any kind of study like this for over 30 or 40 years, but they feel they might approve it if it got to the DEA. One Arizona state senator, Kimberly Yee, a Republican from Phoenix, stopped the study in its tracks. Senator Yee, who chairs the Senate Education Committee and was the recipient of the bill, that committee, had a hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. on Thursday, but Yee said she would not let them consider the study. She's ignoring the testimony of veterans who now suffer from PTSD, and there are hundreds of scenarios in this veteran's head. He says, there are hundreds of scenarios in my head at any time. Using the cannabis quiets that, allows me to go through my day. Again, a palliative medicine, not a curative medicine, but a palliative medicine. The Arizona House bill, which was passed in the House, which would have funded the study, sailed through with a vote of 51-5. But Yee's opposition as committee chairwoman is enough to stop the bill. It's
crazy.
And veterans are really just super disappointed.
This
What
would
if
be a
somebody
time for
has
people
so
to,
much-
instead of speak up on the phone, get down to our office and pick
Oh
it.
my God!
Absolutely.
How does one person have that much power, though? Is what I ask.
Chairmanships
chair.
are very important.
And then she says, she actually, Senator Yee said, I actually have not heard from the sponsor to share what the issues are, or she would be sharing the issues. But the sponsor, Senator Orr, said Yee is the one is difficult to contact. Both myself and numerous community leaders have reached out to members of the Senate regarding this bill, and Kimberly Yee is the only one who has not even returned my phone call. So it is purely an ideological.
Often, well, it could be ideological, and it could be just, the thing is that obviously she's not very up to date on anything, and maybe she really hasn't figured out the whole telephone thing yet.
Could be.
And maybe her constituency
Her
doesn't want
constituency
it,
may be
and
very
so then
conservative,
she's
and
just making this.
People sometimes say, by the way, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Well,
It
here is a
matters.
woman who was
Does matter.
elected, who wound up in one of these strategically important positions.
Because her one vote is
Chairman of
more important
bodies or
than
committees
all of the
control
legislation.
The Education Committee.
the Education Committee.
This is the
It
person you want.
matters that they elected her, and it matters who you vote for too. It matters. You've got to get progressive-minded, forward-thinking people in office, because some of those people are going to be committee chairmen who control agendas.
You
and
know,
make things
if
like
I
this
was her,
happen.
I'd be afraid to stop this for the vets. I mean, there's some people out there that are really sick.
She's not.
You know, I mean, how about if someone takes it personal? You're the one that's not helping me get through this. I mean, you see it all the
Well,
time.
I hope
you know,
that's not the
about
case.
So on the
it.
flip
No,
side-
but I mean, she's hurting a lot of people by her
If
no
I
vote.
would,
She
I would
is.
call on veterans to get down to her office
And
walk in the
protest.
door
I
without
would
an
imagine
appointment and
she's
just
going
say,
to get
listen,
quite a
I want
backlash
to
from
see someone right
veterans
now.
Yeah.
organizations. The flip side of this is, kudos to Colorado. We're talking about education. We always talk about education here on Talking Marijuana. It is the answer to moving things forward. In Colorado, they've started a website now. I think they've given over $3.1 million to this website to educate the people of Colorado. I think one of the things, and they try to do it with a little humor to engage people. One of the ways they're doing it is one of the ads that they have is saying, grilling high is now legal. Driving to get the propane you forgot isn't legal. They're just telling you, use common sense. Let's get education out there. This isn't going to hurt you. It can help you. And here's guidelines. And we need more of that. So kudos to Colorado.
Go Colorado.
And all
Yeah,
the way
go
they've so far
Colorado.
handled their
And no grilling while driving.
no grilling while
definitely not.
driving. We have run out of time.
Alas.
We have other things we'd love to talk about, but it's always great to just
Thank you
chew
for
the
having me.
chew the fat.
Thank
with
you, Michael.
We love you when
Thank
you
you
come.
so
Well,
much
thank
for
you.
coming on, and pura vida.
Pura vida.
See you next week.
See ya.